Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Diving to the Point. And today I have a guest, and it is Yorgos Athanasiadis from Portugal, from Portugal. And Yorgos, hello.
Hello, Martina.
Yorgos, I want to start by asking you to introduce yourself.
What do you mean?
To say,
Whatever comes.
yeah, the question is, who are you?
Okay. My name is Yorgos Athanasiadis. I live in Portugal, so now I'm in Portugal. I come originally from Greece. And this who am I is like a very big question. So I'm many things.
Yeah.
It's difficult to really respond with one, or I have the assumption that it should be something short, my introduction.
I want to interrupt you because
Yes.
what is behind that question is that sometimes people, when I ask them, who are you, or ask them to introduce themselves, they talk about what they are doing. And I'm more interested in hearing who you are without saying what you do. But yeah, you can take your time and tell me whatever you want, how you answer that question, who you are, and not think it must be a short answer. Yeah. So just go.
So I am a being. I'm not really sure if I'm a human being or not. So I don't really associate 100% as being a human being, but I know that I'm a being. I know that I'm here to understand life, to help evolve life in myself, in the others, and in the world. Somehow for me, evolution is something very important. It has been a lot important throughout my life. And evolution meaning like, what's the next step? Like, what's unfolding? What is the next step of, is somehow it's related to the unknown. Like, we have the past, we have the movement, and then I'm much more interested in what comes next. But also it's not something, like, my drive is more, what's the next step? It's not so much what's the big vision of the future. I'm not interested in that. So for me, like, if I would say who I am somebody that tries to understand what's my next step. And through this, my next step is also what's the next step of us as humans, or of us as a world, or of us as Earth. And this can go even more and more. So somehow I'm really fascinated with how the universe evolves and the universe unfolds itself. And I'm being part of it in a way. And by saying this, it's not just it's not just observing and seeing. It's like being part of it. So another thing I really associate myself with is one of my bright principles is manifestations. For me, it's really important to bring things down to this level that we are living. Like, from the, you can say, from the abstract to bringing down to the everyday world, everyday reality. So somehow I am playing in between those two worlds, kind of the higher world where things are not manifested yet, and the manifested world, but I'm not in any of those two dimensions. Somehow I want to play in between and jump up and down, or forward and backwards, if you would like to say.
Okay, thank you. So I heard that you see yourself as a being in the now, living in the now. And what would you say, how big is that now? What is now? What is now? Is it just this moment, or what would you say? Because you were also talking about the next step, and is the next step still in this now for you, or is it in the future? How would you,
Okay, so
and mm, I, yeah, how do you sense that? Yeah.
for me, the now is the space or the time between my impulses. So, for example, it can be very short. I have an impulse now, and I have an impulse in 3 seconds, or it can be I have an impulse now, and I have an impulse in some days. But somehow, it doesn't mean that I live in these days, but somehow there are two and more levels of reality. There is one level that my mind has always thoughts, no, and what to do, but then I have some deeper calls or some deeper impulses. So somehow that don't come directly from my mind. So somehow my time or my now is the time in between those impulses, those callings or those voices. It's a very slower voice. It's a slower. Somehow the mind never stops, but I have inside of myself a different calling or something like. I don't know if it's my heart or what. I don't want to define it, but there is another voice talking, and this voice talks slower. So somehow it can talk now, and maybe it can talk again after 2 days. But somehow, yeah, my now is between those voices, or the time between between the next voice or the next call.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's clear or not. But,
Yeah, it's interesting. I never heard this definition because
I never said this definition before, so it's really I never thought about it, but somehow, yeah.
yeah, but I like it because I'm always a little bit in trouble when I think about what is that small now or what is now, because I cannot be in the now because for me I have this feeling when I try to be in the now, then I'm thinking about it and then I have no chance. I have no chance to be there. And when you say you make that slower, so that you
I don't make it so. It happens. It is slower. It's just a way of hearing this voice. So for me, I don't make it slower.
okay.
But I
What?
am also, yeah.
No, please.
What I wanted to say, like in this moment of my life, I'm somehow in a privileged moment. That doesn't sound so privileged if you see it from a conventional perspective, but I can be much more in the now, because some months ago I was diagnosed with chronic leukemia, and somehow leukemia is a disease that is deadly disease, no? Like it's somehow facing death and I was very weak. I couldn't move, and in a way it was very different from my normal way of being. I used to be always full of energy, and I could always do things. I could never be stopped. And through this process, somehow what happened to me, I stopped. Normally people, when they face death, they have this urgency of fulfilling things. And for me, it happened the contrary. My whole life, I had this urgency of fulfilling things. And when I realized, when I was faced with death, this urgency just dropped away. So by not having this urgency of doing things, my time became opened up, like it became timeless in a way. I entered this timeless space. And this is why I say I'm privileged, because by being able to face death and being able, like facing death every moment of my life, but somehow before it was more conceptual. Now it really happened in a way. And I can enter this timeless thing, and I can hear this voice more clear, and I can take time when I need time to hear this voice, because yeah, somehow this time of my life, like what is really important matters for me, and I don't have energy and time to spend for things that are not important in my life. So it's more easy to be in this space for me at this time of my life.
Wow,
In this now.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that. Yeah. Mm. I'm curious to, when you got this diagnosis, there was, let's say, on this time string of time, there was a point when you got this diagnosis,
Yeah.
and when you heard that for the first time. And what would you say? What is, why did that change something, or what would you have answered if I would have asked you before that point? And why did this point change so much in your life? Can you tell me more about that point?
Yeah, I can try to tell you more. Yeah, in a way, before I was trying to be in the now, and I was trying to be in the timeless, and I was trying to be alive, but by somehow facing death and facing the possibility of death, I yeah, somehow, for me, I took this as a process. It's not something that is a disease that I need to get rid of. So somehow I get it as an information that somehow, and it really changed me, even the first moment that it happened. And my first thought somehow was not about me, because in a way, I'm connected also with just not only my human experience, but also kind of my not human experience. So I'm not really afraid of dying. But the first moment I heard it, I was really scared, and really more for my children and my wife. In a way, this was my first thought. Was, okay, how are they going to survive, or how will it be for my children? I have a son of 7 years old and another of 1.5. At that moment, it was like 1 year old. And yeah, I had like several thoughts that were, okay, my son will, if I die, he will remember me, the son of 1 year old. I had like thoughts like that, no? Or, and in a way, I had to realize a lot of things, like creating a life of, I always wanted to be my life independent, meaning I didn't want to be dependent by anybody, but I was not aware that I was really creating dependency of others over me, in a way. And this was also something to understand.
What do you mean by dependency from others over you? What can you explain that?
Yeah, like I wanted to go out of my house and live alone, not being kind of dependent on my parents, not being dependent of a state, not being dependent of whatever, no. So I wanted to be independent. But through the time, I realized I was not creating dependency from others, but I was letting others be dependent on me. And for example, this was my family structure. And but in a way, what changed, like those days, like I was 2 days in the hospital, and when I came back, the thing is that I can live in the moment. When I'm with my children, like the thought of death is not something that is in the future, that is in every moment. So when I'm with my children, I'm really there, and I'm really there as if the next moment doesn't exist. So really, I don't create. Before this moment, if we had talked, I was creating a lot of somehow things to do in the future. Like I was carrying a lot of things that I wanted to do in the future. So I was going with a big burden and saying this, or I want to have this with my children. And now I'm living the future. So every moment I try to live like I'm with my son, with my children, or with my partner, or whoever. And for example, if I would die now, like my choice is to be with you in this interview. You understand? It's not doing something else of what I'm not doing now. So it's really doing whatever I'm doing, being conscious about my decisions and being at the moment. So if I would die now, I'm okay of dying now and being in the interview with you. I don't have an expectation that I should tell something to my children or my partner that I didn't say, or to somebody else. So in a way, it's very liberating. And it's very, but also it's something that somehow the circumstances had to make it happen in me. And of course, I had to let myself get transformed by it. So there is no path I could say, okay, how did I do it? It just happened to me in a way. And of course, this thing happened to me, and I was prepared for this thing to happen to me. This was also like something that is like if I would have this diagnosis 5 years ago or 10 years ago, my response would be very different, and the way I would evolve through life. So yeah,
That sounds
everything comes in the right moment in a way. This is also another learning that I had.
that sounds to me. The sentence that came up when you were talking was dying every moment. It's like dying every moment, um,
Yeah, it
and
could be, but it's not about thinking about death. But death is like before. It was not one of my possibilities. Now I was saying, okay, I know that I will be old. I know that I will do this, and now it's one of my possibilities. Although a part of me knows I will not die now, but still is in my possibilities, is very present. So yeah, you could say it as we said it, die every moment, or facing death every moment, or having death next to me every moment in a way. It's like having I don't know if the word is exact, but is a death contract that each one of us has. Like we have a death contract, but sometimes we have this idea that our death contract will happen when we are 80 or 90 or I don't know when. So me, I have this death contract, and I'm with death to, like, I'm friend with death. So I'm not really, although my disease is not really, like, in a way, it's not dangerous for dying at the moment. Like this specific thing I have now, but for me, I really took it as, yeah, like there was this possibility, and I could really feel my body not being able of moving out of bed. It for me never happened in my life. So for me, it was like facing death and living with death and accepting. Yeah.
accepting.
Another thing that changed in me is like before I was living in an ideal. Okay, I want to be healthy. I want to be with energy. This was my feeling good thing. When I'm energetic, I'm good. When I don't have energy, I'm not good. And this has also to drop. Like it just vanished. And so when I wake up and I feel tired, I just lie down, and it's okay. It's what I need at this moment. And if I have energy, I just do things. And if at any moment I feel tired, I go back to rest. Of course, I need to negotiate with my partner, with my children. With it doesn't mean that I have this freedom of doing whatever I want, but in a way, I don't. There is no struggle, but also there is no. It's a specific sweet spot between not struggling for something and not really abandoning. It's not abandoning myself, but I'm also not struggling. But I take things as they are at the moment.
Wow. And what would you say was this a conscious decision that you took to see it like that? Or
No,
what was it something, was it the diagnose? What was it that really changed that? What was it?
it was not one thing, and it was not a conscious decision. But I knew, for example, when I got the diagnosis, I say, okay, one part of me needs to die. This was for sure. I was like, when I got this diagnosis, okay, this is somehow a feedback from the universe. A part of me needs to die. And yeah, and somehow I have witnessing this part dying, and another part somehow waking up. But also I'm in the transition. I'm not. I'm still. Yeah, somehow I feel that I'm in transition. I already was in the transition before the diagnosis. Like the last year, I'm in a big transition in a way. So, but yeah, the diagnosis brought me in territory and spaces that I never expected to go. So it was something that I wouldn't do consciously, and it just brought me there.
And I hear that it was not a certain point when that changed, but it was a way, and you are still on that way. You
Yeah,
are transition still
yeah,
on.
and it stays. It doesn't mean that I have always this clarity. There are moments that I don't have this clarity, but yeah, the thing is that I realize by seeing back that most of the time I have this clarity, and I can connect with this part of myself
Mm-hmm.
more clearly.
Mm.
And
What
I
would
also,
yes.
another thing that really changed is like before, like maybe a year ago, I used to have a lot of energy always in my life, and I could do whatever I wanted, or I thought that I could do whatever I want. So I was, in a way, yeah, I was doing things, and I could do even things that I didn't want to do because I knew I had excess of energy. Like, I don't have a problem, I could just do it. And then now that I have less energy, somehow there are a lot of things I need to let go. Okay, this I don't do it, this I don't do it, no. And so somehow focusing on the things that really matter to me. This is also something that happened through this process, in a way.
Thank you. I two questions came into my mind. The first question is, what do you think? What happens after death for you?
I have many stories about after death, but in a way, like my most yeah, like the story I have more that is more alive in me is like when I wake up in the morning and I say, okay, the dream was a dream, and now I move on. Somehow I know that when I die, I will wake up and I say, okay, it was not a dream, but this was okay. This was a theater piece or whatever I passed, and okay, I know who I am. I know what. Somehow it's expanding more. So this is one thing I know, and another thing I know, because I have personal experience of like out of body. I had out of body experiences since very young in my life. This means that somehow my body is sleeping and I'm out of my body, and or I'm sleeping but still one part of me is awake and can listen whatever happens around. And when I connect with this with this reality, when I'm out of my body or when I'm very present, like there are no thoughts, but somehow it's very familiar. So there is something in me that, yeah, there is something that after death stays. So and that now I cannot really see how it is, but I know that, yeah, it's something I'm very familiar with. I don't know if it really answers your question.
Yeah. Yes, it does. It answers my question, and there are more questions come up, but there was another question, and no, I think I want to stay there at this point. What you said with what you experienced as a child, because did you tell anybody when you was a child? Did you tell anybody what you experienced?
Not exactly. Like when I was young, I remember somehow I thought it was a dream. My recurring dream was that there was one moment when I could, somehow inside my dream, I could feel that there was a specific sensation that I could feel I could swim in space. So I could fly. And I was doing it a lot as a child, but I always thought it was a dream. So I knew that there was a specific moment where the air was more thick, so I could swim like water. And this was my sensation most of the time. And then I can recall also as a child, I used to sleep very early at night, like 8 o'clock, 8:30, I was sleeping, but life was happening around me. Like I'm come from Greece. We used to go in the weekends in the village, like we used to spend with my aunts and uncles, like there were a lot of people in the house. And I loved this sensation of sleeping, but hearing them. I could feel the love and I could hear everything, and I was present in a way. And this I just realized some years ago when I somehow had consciously out of body experience, and I could realize, okay, this sensation was a sensation of vibration that, okay, I had this when I was young, or yeah, I could were like this thing when I was young that I loved to be in a space and sleeping and everybody being there. One part of me was not sleeping, so I could hear them and I could feeling loved and but it hasn't been an easy path for me, because like to arrive to this realization, because sleep for me and experimenting in sleep has been very important. But I used to suffer a lot from, I think it's called, I don't know, sleep paralysis, like before going to sleep. And somehow there is one moment where your body, when you, before you start dreaming, your body shuts down.
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, you would just move. So I used to suffer from this thing because I would fall asleep, but somehow one part of me would stay conscious, and then my body would shut down, and then I would like to move and I couldn't move, and I wanted to scream and I couldn't scream. And yeah, and this was a recurring situation that I was finding myself. But then somehow through getting more courage and getting more perspectives and healing more things, I could face this moment. And when I faced this moment, I realized, okay, this is just a natural process, and it's just the body going to sleep, and then I can still be awake without getting panicked. And I think for me, yeah, this confrontation is confrontation with death also, no, in a way. And this is why also I don't feel so afraid of death, because I'm familiar with my body dying in a way, and me still being alive, or still being, the me is not exactly me. Like it's me, but it's not the me that is talking to you. One part of this me is talking to you, but there is also a lot of things around it, no? But yeah, in a way, if I see it now that we talk, I haven't thought about it, but in a way, this confrontation with death hasn't happened just now, no? Like having this diagnosis, because I have, like, this thing has happened, like I had many years with this thing from my adolescence, in a way, like this paralysis thing, and somehow going to sleep and being conscious and being afraid, and having to overcome this fear, like overcoming this fear. At the same time, I was overcoming the fear of death in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not just that this happened to me and I had these realizations. No, there was a very big path to arrive here. And probably, I don't know if it's just from this life. So I don't want to make stories, but yeah, like I have the realizations I have because I took a specific path and I had the experiences I had.
When I remember when you're telling that, I remember that when I was a child and was lying in my bed at night and should sleep, I was thinking about death, and I heard, because my grandma died, for example, I've heard that, yeah, I think that children have a deep understanding of death, what it is and what's the purpose of all. And I was lying in my bed and I was thinking, when I'm going to die, I will be dead. I will be not here. And this eternity, this trying to understand eternity just made me, I remember this moment very good, made me crazy, because I thought, what is always, 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 always. And then I really, something in my head got crazy as a child.
Yeah, I had similar experiences as you're saying. For example, I was grown up in an environment that was religious, no, Christian, Orthodox Christian in Greece. My family, like my father and my mother, were not really somehow, yeah, they were a bit more open-minded, but in a way, I was grown up with this. And I remember being very afraid of paradise, or being very afraid of hell, because it was a permanent state. It was something that would never go away. It's for eternity. And yeah, I was getting really panicked and really freaking out. And yeah, a lot of my fears were with this thing, like a lot, like being afraid of hell, of being afraid of paradise, not being afraid of paradise, being afraid of not going to paradise. But this, somehow we got this story that there is eternity. And for me, from my experience now, like nothing is eternal. What is eternal is the movement. There is always a movement. There is always a flow. And it's never just a state that is, yeah, not, yeah, I cannot say never, because this is also using absolutisms and it's creating the same thing. But one thing that when you were talking, I remember, like about fear of death, I remember when the father of my partner died and we were in the house, and somehow my son was like, my first son was born like he was 6 months old, and he was with us, and we were together sleeping there in the living room, and I could feel the presence, his presence in the house, and I was getting scared, but really scared, and my partner also. But then I could see my son being so calm and so comfortable, and I was saying, okay, he's my teacher, like he's not afraid of this presence, and I'm the big one, and I'm afraid of this presence, and somehow I was getting security by seeing him being calm. And it was like really, yeah, I resonate with this, because when you said that children are really comfortable with death, for them it's something natural, and also of things that we cannot see. Like I was sensing something I could not see, and I was really scared of it. But my son that was so young, of course he could sense it, and he was so calm. So yeah, it was.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I think it's also so precious if children can rise up with parents that think about that like you do, and not because I was also risen in a religious environment, Catholic Catholic environment, and for me the idea of a life after death, or having lived for many times already, was at the beginning very scary. And yeah, and now when I think about it, it's normal. I couldn't even imagine that it is not so, that not like that.
Yeah.
And I also find it very interesting what you said about the word nothing and never. Nothing and this eternity, and also words like always, always, never, nothing. These are all for me in my head. I cannot understand what that means, because it's, for me, these words are just word boxes. The word always is just a box, and everybody fills it with something, some story. And in reality, in my when I try to let this idea in what it is, then I cannot fill this box. It's just a concept. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's somehow very reductionist, making somehow something that we don't really know. Life is a process. We don't really know life, and there is movement, there is thing, and we try to reduction it into always, never, something. Like it's trying to freeze things out. Like you pause the pause, and you want to keep things in pause forever without putting play again, or to playing a loop. No, always. It's like, okay, we loop and we loop and we loop. It's somehow, I think those words are like a malfunction of the system. So, for example, if you, as before with your Bluetooth, it was not working, and somehow, when we enter in this, we're really getting disconnected. When we try to, when we enter in this state of absolutism, we think, okay, it's always like that, or it's never like that, or eternity. I don't know. Somehow, for me, life is movement, and those things are not helping movement happen, or are looping the movement, and the movement is not just a loop.
Yorgos, our time is over now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing how time is really running, and when I think about what you said, what the now is, then for me it was like having a now of 40 minutes, because for me it's also like that when I think when I forget about time, and I have a control box, I'm a controller, and for me when I forget about time, then it's for me it's amazing, and I want to say thank you
Yeah, thank you,
for,
Martina.
for sharing everything that you shared. And I really hope that we will see us
Yes,
physical
of course.
when this theater outside is over, and yeah, we can hug and say hello.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Wish you all the best. And
Yeah, I still feel you very close. Even if you're where you are in your room, I feel you that you are in my room here in Portugal. So really,
thank you, Yorgos.
thank you, Martina.